How dirty could Hollywood get before theaters finally said no? Between 1930 and 1934, filmmakers slipped forbidden affairs, ruthless criminals, revealing costumes, and shocking moral choices onto American screens. Some theaters cut scenes, others rejected entire films, and a few movies became so controversial that they helped Hollywood build its strictest censorship machine. These are 35 pre-code films that proved old Hollywood was never as innocent as it pretended to be. Before we uncover Hollywood's most forbidden films, like this video, share it with another classic movie fan, and subscribe to our channel. Number 34. The Big House, 1930. Behind enormous stone walls, MGM created a prison world where authority was weak. Violence could erupt without warning, and criminals sometimes appeared more organized than the officers guarding them. The plot begins when frightened young Kent is imprisoned after causing a fatal road accident. Inside, he shares a cell with hardened criminal Butch and experienced thief Morgan. Kent's fear gradually turns into betrayal, while Morgan develops feelings for Kent's loyal sister. One unforgettable scene shows hundreds of prisoners sitting silently in the dining hall before a riot explodes. Metal cups strike tables, guards panic, and the room becomes a carefully controlled storm. For early sound audiences, the noise and physical force felt alarmingly real. Censors worried that prison films might teach audiences criminal methods or make lawbreakers appear heroic. The picture also showed overcrowding, corruption, smuggled weapons, and officers losing control. These were not comforting images during a period of economic fear and growing public distrust. Although morality eventually receives its expected victory, Wallace Beery's Butch remains the movie's most energetic character. His humor, courage, and strange loyalty threatened the official message that crime always produced misery. The film's greatest offense was therefore not a revealing costume or suggestive bedroom. It was the possibility that viewers might admire the prisoner more than the institution supposedly correcting him. Please take a moment to like this video and tell us in the comments which pre-code film shocked you the most. And subscribe with notifications turned on, because the most controversial entries in this countdown are still ahead. Number 33. A Free Soul, 1931. Inside a luxurious home, respectable lawyer Stephen Ashe publicly defends criminals while privately losing control of his own life. His daughter Jan, played by Norma Shearer, shares his rebellious spirit and refuses to follow the polite rules expected of wealthy young women. After meeting gangster Ace Wilfong, Jan enters a passionate relationship even though she understands his violent nature. The film makes their attraction unmistakable without hiding behind innocent misunderstandings. Jan visits Ace's apartment, remains there overnight, and later attempts to leave when his possessiveness becomes frightening. Their confrontation became the movie's defining sequence. Ace blocks the doorway and declares that Jan belongs to him. She fights back verbally and physically, but his power over her has changed from exciting to threatening. Lionel Barrymore's courtroom speech also became famous. As Stephen defends the man accused of killing Ace, he admits that his failures as a father helped create the tragedy. Barrymore reportedly performed the long scene in an extended take, giving it the intensity of live theater. Moral campaigners disliked the film's combination of addiction, organized crime, unmarried intimacy, and a heroine who openly chooses danger. Jan is not presented as innocent prey. She walks toward Ace because she desires him, then discovers that freedom without protection carries consequences. That honesty made the picture far more troubling to censors than a simple story about a good woman deceived by a bad man. Number 32. Night Nurse, 1931. A hospital should represent safety, yet this Warner Brothers thriller turns private rooms and polished corridors into hiding places for cruelty. Barbara Stanwyck plays Laura Hart, a determined trainee nurse who accepts a private position caring for two sick children. She soon realizes that their mother is constantly partying while a dishonest doctor keeps the children weak. The plan is connected to chauffeur Nick, played by Clark Gable, who hopes to control the family fortune. The scene most viewers remember occurs when Laura challenges Nick inside the house. Gable, without his later romantic charm, strikes her and calmly continues giving orders. His brutality is shocking because the film offers almost no warning and because Laura is one of the few people trying to protect the children. Another unusual sequence follows nurses changing uniforms in a shared room. Their casual conversation and visible undergarments were considered daring enough to attract censor attention, even though the scene also reveals how exhausting and poorly protected their working lives are. Bootlegger Morty eventually helps Laura when official institutions fail. That created another uncomfortable message. An illegal businessman behaves with greater honor than doctors, wealthy parents, and household employees. The picture mixed attempted harm to children, corruption, revealing clothing, and an unexpectedly sympathetic criminal. For cautious theaters, it was not merely indecent. It suggested that respectable uniforms could conceal monsters, while society's supposed villains might save the day. Number 31. Safe in Hell, 1931. Heat seems to rise from every frame as Gilda Carlson, a woman surviving through illegal relationships, flees New Orleans after believing she has caused a man's death. Her sailor fiancé helps her escape to Tortuga, an island where fugitives cannot easily be extradited. The hotel is filled with men who immediately recognize that Gilda is vulnerable. Rather than finding safety, she enters a place where almost every smile hides an expectation. A famous scene shows Gilda descending the hotel staircase while the residents silently watch her. Nothing explicit happens, yet the looks tell the entire story. She understands that she has become the only available woman in a building full of desperate men. Director William Wellman also gives significant roles to black performers Nina Mae McKinney and Clarence Muse, who observe the supposedly civilized white characters with intelligence and skepticism. Their presence gives the film a perspective rarely permitted in mainstream productions of the period. The final act becomes surprisingly tragic. Gilda accepts punishment rather than surrender to the island official who attempts to control her. Her choice is presented as an act of dignity, even though society has offered her almost no dignified path. With its direct discussion of paid companionship, false respectability, colonial corruption, and predatory authority, the movie was considered dangerous material. It never pretends Gilda is spotless, but it makes the people judging her appear worse. Number 30. The Public Enemy, 1931. A rain-soaked doorstep produced one of the most disturbing images in early gangster cinema. Tom Powers begins as a neighborhood thief and grows into a successful bootlegger during Prohibition. James Cagney plays him with such speed and confidence that audiences could not stop watching, even when Tom's behavior became cruel. His rise includes robberies, intimidation, betrayal, and a complete rejection of ordinary morality. The grapefruit scene became famous almost immediately. During breakfast, Tom grows irritated with his girlfriend and pushes half a grapefruit into her face. The moment is brief, but its casual humiliation shocked viewers more than a complicated action sequence might have done. Later, Tom is returned to his family after being taken by rivals. His brother hears someone at the door, opens it, and watches Tom's wrapped body fall forward into the house. The scene removes every trace of glamour from his career. Censors and civic groups feared gangster pictures because criminals often appeared bold, wealthy, and independent before receiving punishment in the final minutes. Even with Tom's terrible ending, Cagney's energy made the journey look exciting. Some cities considered restrictions on gangster films, arguing that they encouraged imitation and damaged respect for law. Yet the movie also showed why audiences were fascinated. Official society looked slow and dishonest, while Tom seized power with terrifying directness. Theaters were not simply afraid of the violence. They were afraid viewers might enjoy Tom's rebellion before condemning it. Number 29. Frankenstein, 1931. Few lines caused more trouble than Dr. Frankenstein's ecstatic declaration after his artificial creature begins to move. The story follows an ambitious scientist who abandons normal medical limits and builds a living body from human remains. When lightning powers the machinery, Frankenstein believes he has conquered death itself. His celebration was considered offensive in several regions because it sounded like a man claiming divine authority. Another controversial sequence involves the creature meeting a young girl beside a lake. She shows him how flowers float on the water. When the flowers are gone, the confused creature makes a disastrous decision. For years, many prints removed the end of the scene, causing audiences to see the girl disappear without fully understanding what happened. Boris Karloff's performance complicates the story. His creature is dangerous, but he is also frightened, mistreated, and unable to understand the world. The human characters lock him away, threaten him with fire, and then act surprised when he responds violently. Regional censor boards demanded different eliminations. Kansas removed images including a hypodermic injection, while Quebec rejected the film in its entirety, unless extensive changes were made. The picture's supposed indecency was therefore intellectual as well as visual. It questioned creation, scientific responsibility, parental failure, and society's treatment of an unwanted being. The monster was frightening, but the film quietly asked whether his respectable creator was worse. Number 28. Blonde Crazy, 1931. Fast talking replaces conventional romance when hotel bellhop Bert Harris begins running small confidence schemes with chambermaid Ann Roberts. James Cagney and Joan Blondell behave less like innocent sweethearts than professional partners who understand exactly how dishonest their world has become. Bert tricks businessmen, blackmails an unfaithful guest, and repeatedly assumes he can outsmart anyone. Anne assists him, while warning that confidence is not the same as intelligence. One memorable scene involves Anne changing clothes while Bert remains nearby. Their conversation continues with relaxed familiarity, and the camera treats their closeness as ordinary rather than scandalous. Blondel's sharp replies make Anne seem fully aware of both her attractiveness and Bert's weaknesses. The story becomes darker when Bert attempts a larger financial scheme and discovers that another swindler has manipulated him. His belief that he is the smartest person in every room leads directly to prison. What unsettled moral observers was not simply the film's revealing humor. Bert and Anne are charming because of their dishonesty, not despite it. Their victims are often wealthy hypocrites, making the schemes feel like revenge against a rigged economy. The ending introduces sacrifice and possible reform, but the picture has already spent most of its running time teaching viewers how confidence games operate. It also lets Anne control the emotional relationship. In a stricter era, crime had to look miserable from the beginning. Here, it looks clever, modern, and dangerously entertaining. Number 27. The Easiest Way, 1931. Poverty, rather than wickedness, pushes Laura Murdoch toward choices that respectable society condemns. Raised in a struggling working-class family, Laura becomes a model and attracts the attention of wealthy advertising executive Brockton. He offers her an apartment, expensive clothes, and financial security. The arrangement is never disguised as ordinary romance. Both understand what he expects in return. The most revealing scenes occur inside Laura's new home. Every elegant object represents comfort, but it also belongs to Brockton. When she attempts to leave him for newspaper reporter Jack Madison, the apartment becomes evidence that her independence was always an illusion. Constance Bennett plays Laura with restraint, presenting her not as a scheming temptress, but as someone exhausted by deprivation. Her family enjoys the benefits of her money, while remaining ready to judge its source. Censors objected to stories in which unmarried relationships appeared financially practical. The danger was greater when the woman involved seemed sympathetic. Laura is not destroyed because she lacks morality. She is trapped because the respectable alternatives offered to poor women are painfully limited. The picture eventually moves toward punishment and regret, yet its social criticism remains clear. Wealthy Brockton can purchase companionship without losing his reputation, while Laura carries all the shame. For theaters under pressure from religious groups, that double standard was explosive. The movie did not merely display forbidden behavior. It suggested that society had created the market for it. Number 26. A Farewell to Arms, 1932. War provides the background, but the greatest censorship dispute surrounded a woman giving birth. American ambulance driver Frederick Henry falls in love with British nurse Catherine Barclay while serving in Italy during the First World War. Their relationship develops quickly and without a wedding. When military officials attempt to separate them, private letters are intercepted, leaving each lover to believe the other has forgotten. Gary Cooper and Helen Hayes give the romance a desperate quality. The most famous section follows Frederick abandoning the military retreat and crossing dangerous territory to reach Catherine. Their reunion offers only temporary hope because she is already seriously ill after childbirth. Will Hayes objected strongly to the medical sequence, arguing that its images and references violated the production code. Paramount made cuts involving labor pains and other details. Even after industry approval, censors in British Columbia and Australia rejected the film. The deeper offense was the way the story treated an unmarried relationship. Frederick and Catherine privately consider themselves husband and wife, and the film asks the audience to accept their emotional commitment without official approval. Religion, military duty, and legal marriage all fail to protect them. Their private love appears more sincere than the systems condemning it. Theaters that rejected the film could point to childbirth or intimate dialogue, but its most dangerous message was simpler. Two people might define their relationship for themselves, and the audience might still regard it as sacred. Number 25. 3 on a Match, 1932. A simple childhood superstition becomes a warning when 3 former school friends reunite as adults and light their cigarettes from the same match. Mary has become a performer. Ruth works as a secretary, and Vivian appears to possess everything society promises will create happiness: wealth, marriage, and a young son. Yet Vivian feels trapped by her perfect life. During an ocean voyage, she meets charming gambler Michael Loftus and suddenly abandons her family. What begins as escape quickly becomes captivity. Michael's fashionable parties lead Vivian into addiction, debt, and emotional collapse. and Dvorak's performance changes visibly as Vivian moves from elegant boredom to trembling desperation. The film's most unsettling sequence occurs when criminals hold Vivian and her son in a shabby apartment. She hears them planning to harm the child if payment does not arrive. In a frantic attempt to save him, she writes a message on her clothing and makes a fatal leap from the window, hoping witnesses will find the warning. For pre-code audiences, the speed of Vivian's fall was shocking. The movie openly connected wealthy nightlife with drugs, unmarried relationships, neglect, kidnapping, and organized crime. Yet it also gave Vivian a final act of maternal courage, instead of treating her as nothing more than a cautionary example. Censors disliked films that displayed forbidden behavior in enough detail to make it understandable. 3 on a Match went further. It suggested that domestic respectability itself might feel like a prison, especially to a woman whose desires had never been considered. The famous match superstition frames the story as fate, but the tragedy develops from loneliness, manipulation, and a society that notices Vivian only after she stops obeying it. Number 24. Red-Headed Woman, 1932. No apology arrives when Lil Andrews looks at her reflection and decides that beauty will become her weapon. Jean Harlow plays Lil as a working-class secretary, determined to enter the wealthy world surrounding her employer, Bill Legendre. Bill is married, but that obstacle means little to her. She arranges private meetings, creates rumors, and uses every social weakness she can identify. A famous opening moment shows Lil dyeing her hair and asking whether it is red enough. The question is playful, but it announces a transformation. She is not waiting to be discovered. She is constructing the person who can force open locked doors. After beginning an affair with Bill, Lil engineers the collapse of his marriage and becomes his wife. Respectable society refuses to accept her, so she turns her attention toward an even wealthier man. When Bill discovers the betrayal, the confrontation becomes chaotic, but Lil still refuses to behave like a defeated sinner. The conclusion caused particular outrage. Instead of ending alone, disgraced, or dead, she appears overseas with another rich companion, while a former lover works as her chauffeur. The implication is unmistakable. Lil has survived, improved her position, and may continue doing exactly what worked before. That ending violated the moral structure reformers demanded. Forbidden behavior could appear on screen only when punishment clearly outweighed pleasure. Red-Headed Woman offers consequences, but Lil repeatedly escapes them through nerve and opportunity. Harlow's humor intensifies the provocation. Viewers are not simply observing a dangerous woman. They are invited to enjoy her victories. The picture exposes wealthy men as willing participants who condemn Lil publicly while pursuing her privately. For theaters facing organized pressure, the film represented everything critics feared about pre-code Hollywood: seduction without shame, marriage treated as strategy, and a woman who understands that society's rules are often weakest around the people claiming to defend them. Number 23. Call Her Savage, 1932. Returning to the screen after personal scandal, Clara Bow chose a story almost designed to outrage anyone expecting her to apologize. NASA Springer grows up on a Texas estate, where her fierce temper leads neighbors to call her savage. She fights with men, rejects polite behavior, and enters a disastrous marriage with wealthy Larry Crosby. After discovering his betrayal, she creates a new life in New York, but repeatedly encounters humiliation and tragedy. One notorious early scene shows NASA wrestling with her companion Moonglow before striking him with a whip. Their fight carries an unmistakable sensual charge, even though neither character openly acknowledges it. Another scene enters a Greenwich Village nightclub where 2 male customers perform a playful song together, an unusually direct glimpse of gay urban culture for a major studio film of the period. The story includes marital betrayal, mixed ancestry, prostitution, religious hypocrisy, an infant's death, and emotional collapse. Yet Bow refuses to turn NASA into a quiet victim. Even at her lowest point, she radiates anger rather than submissive shame. The source novel had already become notorious for its salacious material, making the adaptation a risky project before filming began. Bow's own public image added another layer. Newspapers had spent years turning her private difficulties into entertainment, so audiences could easily read NASA's defiance as Bow's response to judgment. Some scenes are undeniably sensational, but the film's most provocative idea concerns identity. NASA eventually learns that the heritage hidden by her family explains why society has always treated her as an outsider. The revelation is handled through attitudes now recognized as deeply dated, yet it still exposes the cruelty of rigid social categories. Conservative exhibitors faced a film that offered almost every forbidden topic at once. More dangerously, It gave its scandalous heroine the energy, humor, and emotional authority normally reserved for respectable characters. Number 22. Rain, 1932. Constant rain traps a group of travelers on a South Pacific island, but the real pressure comes from a reformer who believes he owns another person's conscience. Sadie Thompson arrives wearing bright clothes, playing loud records, and enjoying the company of soldiers. Missionary Alfred Davidson quickly decides that her past makes her unfit for the island. He uses political connections to threaten deportation unless she accepts his religious control. Joan Crawford's Sadie initially responds with laughter and anger. In the film's most famous confrontations, she stands close to Davidson and refuses to lower her eyes while he describes her as morally ruined. Their scenes grow increasingly uncomfortable because his obsession appears less spiritual with every meeting. After days of fear, isolation, and relentless pressure, Sadie seems to convert. Davidson presents this as victory, yet the atmosphere suggests that he has broken her resistance rather than saved her. His private visit to her room exposes the desire hidden beneath his moral campaign. The ending reveals Davidson's collapse and Sadie's bitter understanding of what happened. She abandons the submissive appearance he forced upon her and leaves with a soldier, reclaiming part of her former identity. Religious organizations had objected to versions of W. Somerset Maugham's story long before this adaptation. The conflict was obvious. A missionary, supposedly representing virtue, becomes the film's most dangerous hypocrite. Sadie's profession and behavior were controversial, but the story directs greater condemnation toward the man judging her. The island setting removes the comfortable barriers of American society. With nowhere to hide, moral authority becomes personal intimidation. Rain therefore challenged more than modesty. It questioned whether public reformers were motivated by compassion, power, or desires they refused to admit. For theaters dependent on church-going audiences, that accusation could be far more threatening than Sadie's clothes. Number 21. Blonde Venus, 1932. A glamorous nightclub entrance hides the desperate choices of a wife trying to save her family. Marlene Dietrich plays Helen Faraday, a former performer married to chemist Edward Faraday. When Edward becomes seriously ill, Helen returns to the stage to earn money for his treatment. Wealthy politician Nick Townsend offers financial help, but his interest is personal, creating an arrangement Helen accepts while her husband is overseas receiving care. The film's legendary nightclub sequence begins with performers in costumes inspired by an African fantasy. A figure in a gorilla suit enters, removes the head, and reveals Dietrich beneath an enormous blonde wig. She then sings Hot Voodoo while the audience stares. The imagery is racially offensive by modern standards, but its startling theatrical design made the scene impossible to forget. When Edward returns and learns about Nick, he attempts to take their son away. Helen escapes with the child and travels through cheap hotels, trains, and unfamiliar towns. Her transformation from star performer to exhausted fugitive gives the film its emotional force. Authorities eventually separate mother and son, and Helen returns to nightlife with a colder public personality. She becomes internationally successful but emotionally detached, using the same glamorous image that once helped her survive. Censors confronted adultery, financial dependence, motherhood outside respectable expectations, and a heroine whose forbidden relationship was linked to sacrifice rather than simple selfishness. Helen does not turn to Nick because she hates her husband. She acts because medical treatment requires money that virtue alone cannot provide. The picture also refuses to make the husband entirely sympathetic. Edward's wounded pride leads him to pursue Helen across the country, even when the chase harms their child. Respectability becomes another form of possession. Dietrich's control deepens the scandal. Whether wearing a tuxedo, evening gown, or traveling clothes, Helen appears to design her identity according to the situation. The film asks whether morality means obeying social rules or protecting the people one loves. Its answer remained too ambiguous for reformers who demanded clear punishment and cleaner heroines. Number 20. Island of Lost Souls, 1932. The question, "Are we not men?" echoes through a jungle laboratory where science has become organized cruelty. Shipwreck survivor Edward Parker is delivered to a remote island controlled by Dr. Moreau, played with smiling menace by Charles Laughton. Moreau has been experimenting on animals, transforming them into creatures that can speak, walk, and experience human fear. He controls them through laws and punishment inside a chamber they call the House of Pain. Bela Lugosi leads the creatures in the movie's most famous ritual. Moreau recites rules forbidding them from walking on all fours, eating flesh, or attacking humans. After each command, they answer together, "Are we not men?" Their obedience sounds less like civilization than terror. Another disturbing element involves Loda, the Panther Woman. Moreau encourages Parker to become attracted to her because he wants to prove that one of his creations can pass as human. Parker does not initially understand that he is part of an experiment. When Loda begins reverting to animal behavior, Moreau reacts with disappointment rather than compassion. The climax turns the laboratory's methods against its creator. Once the creatures realize Moreau has violated his own law, they drag him toward the room he used to control them. British authorities banned the picture for decades, with its challenge to nature and suggestion of relationships between humans and altered animals provoking particular concern. The film was officially considered contrary to natural law, while later accounts linked the ban to its disturbing biological implications. Yet the picture is not shocking, only because of makeup or implied intimacy. Moreau speaks like a colonial ruler who has renamed violence as progress. He creates a hierarchy, teaches obedience, and treats living beings as material for his ambition. For early audiences, the monsters were frightening. For censors, the real danger may have been the possibility that viewers would recognize Moreau's behavior outside the island, in laboratories, empires, workplaces, and institutions that also claimed cruelty was necessary for improvement. Number 19. The Sign of the Cross, 1932. A lavish historical epic became one of pre-code Hollywood's clearest demonstrations that religious spectacle could also be sold through temptation. Set during the reign of Emperor Nero, the story follows Roman prefect Marcus Superbus after he falls in love with Christian woman Mercia. Marcus attempts to protect her from persecution, but his attraction places him between imperial power and a faith he does not understand. Cecil B. DeMille fills the film with enormous sets, political intrigue, decadent parties, and scenes designed to test the boundaries of censorship. Claudette Colbert's Empress Poppaea famously bathes in a pool filled with milk while attendants surround her. The camera lingers on the luxury, turning Roman corruption into a dazzling advertisement. Another controversial sequence features dancer Ancaria performing for Mercia. Her movements and lyrics are intended to awaken desires Mercia has supposedly rejected. The scene makes temptation unusually direct for a mainstream studio production. The arena finale combines religious martyrdom with spectacular cruelty. Prisoners face animals and elaborate punishments before Marcus chooses to join Mercia rather than remain part of Nero's world. DeMille frames their final walk as spiritual victory, but the film spends far more time displaying the decadence being condemned. That contradiction protected and endangered the picture. Producers could claim that the story defended Christianity. Reformers responded that moral lessons did not require such extended views of bathing, dancing, torture, and imperial pleasure. Later reissues removed several controversial moments, proving that the same material accepted during the pre-code period became unacceptable once enforcement tightened. The film's reputation survived partly because those restored scenes reveal how skillfully DeMille used piety as cover for spectacle. Number 18. Hot Saturday, 1932. One ordinary weekend destroys a young woman's reputation, even though the scandal surrounding her is largely invented. Ruth Brock works in a small-town bank and spends Saturday evening with friends at the lakeside home of wealthy playboy Romer Sheffield. When another man becomes jealous, Ruth misses her ride home and remains at Romer's house. Nothing happens between them, but gossip begins almost immediately. The next morning, neighbors interpret every glance as evidence. Ruth's employer questions her character, her family becomes embarrassed, and childhood friend Bill Fadden withdraws his marriage proposal. The entire town accepts the most exciting version of events because truth is less entertaining. The film's memorable scenes are not grand confrontations, but small moments of social cruelty. Women whisper across shop counters. Men repeat rumors while pretending concern. Ruth walks through familiar streets and realizes that every face has changed. Nancy Carroll plays her confusion gradually. At first, Ruth believes an explanation will solve everything. She then discovers that respectable society does not want clarification. It wants a public sinner. Censors were uneasy with the picture because its title, advertising, and central misunderstanding revolved around the assumption of unmarried intimacy. More importantly, the film attacked the communities responsible for enforcing moral standards. Ruth is judged without evidence by people who enjoy imagining her fall. The conclusion adds a sharp pre-code twist. After losing her job, social position, and engagement over something she did not do, Ruth returns to Romer. She decides that if society has already assigned her a reputation, she may choose the life associated with it. That decision refuses the conventional ending in which an innocent woman proves her purity and is welcomed back. Ruth instead rejects the town's authority. Romer, previously treated as dangerous, appears more honest than the respectable citizens who destroyed her. Number 17. Female. 1933. The powerful executive normally entered his office, expecting women to obey him. This film simply changed the executive into a woman and watched audiences panic. Allison Drake owns and controls an automobile company inherited from her father. She works aggressively, demands results, and invites attractive male employees to her mansion when she desires company. Afterward, she frequently arranges transfers or dismissals to prevent emotional complications. Ruth Chatterton plays Allison with the confidence usually given to male tycoons. Her enormous Art Deco home reflects that control. Doors open automatically, servants disappear on command, and every room seems designed to protect her from ordinary expectations. One of the film's boldest sequences begins when Allison invites a young employee to dinner. He believes the evening may advance his career, but she makes the personal nature of the invitation clear. The scene deliberately mirrors stories in which male bosses exploit female workers. By reversing the genders, the film exposes how normal that behavior had become when men held the power. Her system begins to fail after engineer Jim Thorne refuses to become another temporary companion. He challenges her management decisions and rejects the idea that wealth gives her complete control. The ending moves Allison toward conventional marriage and domestic life, which helped calm some viewers. Yet most of the picture has already shown a woman running a major company, choosing partners without apology, and separating desire from romance. Censors were not only concerned about suggestion. Allison's authority challenged the assumption that female independence should remain emotional, temporary, or punished. She does not become powerful through deception, like many pre-code social climbers. She already owns the building. The movie also complicates its supposedly liberating premise. Allison behaves toward employees in ways that would be condemned today regardless of gender. That discomfort makes the story more interesting. It is not arguing that exploitation becomes acceptable when a woman controls it. It is showing how differently audiences react when familiar male privilege appears in female hands. Number 16. Employee's Entrance, 1933. Long before modern office dramas exposed cruel corporations, Warren Williams Kurt Anderson ruled a department store as if every employee belonged to him. Anderson believes business success excuses any method. He fires workers without sympathy, humiliates managers in public, and treats personal loyalty as weakness. During the Depression, when unemployment makes every job precious, he uses fear to control thousands of people. Young salesman Martin West becomes one of Anderson's chosen protégés. Martin hopes to marry store employee Madeline, but Anderson has already taken an interest in her. The relationship creates a personal conflict inside a system where refusing the boss may mean losing everything. A notorious sequence occurs after Anderson encounters Madeline in the store late at night. Their conversation moves from professional to personal, and the next morning makes clear that he has used his position to obtain what he wanted. The film avoids explicit images, but the imbalance of power is impossible to miss. Later, Anderson orders Martin to prioritize the store above his marriage. When Martin begins adopting the same ruthless habits, Madeline's emotional state deteriorates. The corporation seems capable of entering every room of their home. What made the movie especially dangerous was Anderson's success. He is cruel, manipulative, and frequently correct about business. The store survives because he makes decisions softer executives avoid. His board condemns his personality while benefiting from his results. The production code demanded that wrongdoing never appear attractive or profitable. Employee's Entrance spends most of its running time showing the opposite. Anderson receives no punishment equal to the damage he causes. Even his final moment suggests that another crisis will simply give him a new opportunity to dominate. Number 15. She Done Him Wrong, 1933. Mae West needed barely over an hour to scandalize reformers, rescue Paramount's finances, and convince Hollywood that suggestion could be more powerful than anything shown directly. Set in the 1890s, the film centers on nightclub singer Lady Lou, a woman surrounded by admirers, diamonds, criminals, and secrets. Her former lover Chick Clark remains in prison, unaware that Lou has moved on. Meanwhile, an apparently respectable mission worker named Captain Cummings investigates illegal activity connected to the nightclub. West enters the story with complete command of the room. Men offer jewelry, protection, and devotion, but she treats each promise as entertainment. Her dialogue turns ordinary words into invitations without requiring explicit language. The most remembered moment arrives when Lou studies Cary Grant's Captain Cummings and suggests that he visit her sometime. The line became inseparable from West's public image, even though its exact popular wording differs from what she says in the picture. Lou's costumes also attracted attention. Tight gowns, elaborate hats, and a confident walk made her body part of the character's authority. She does not dress to gain male approval. She expects approval before entering. The plot eventually reveals crime, deception, and a threat from Chick. Cummings saves Lou from immediate danger, but the ending does not truly reform her. As he places a ring on her hand, she admires the jewelry before considering the commitment. The character also disturbed conventional morality because she remained generous. Lou helps a desperate young woman, shows loyalty to friends, and appears more emotionally honest than many respectable people around her. She enjoys attention, but she is not heartless. Number 14. I'm No Angel, 1933. A circus performer, a courtroom, and a collection of wealthy admirers gave Mae West another opportunity to test how much suggestion a screen could hold. Tira performs as a dancer and lion tamer in a traveling carnival. Her dangerous act attracts crowds, but her personal life becomes more complicated after a dishonest boyfriend involves her in trouble. To escape financial pressure, she develops a spectacular new performance in which she places her head inside a lion's mouth. The stunt makes Tira famous and carries her into New York society. There she meets wealthy Jack Clayton, played by Cary Grant. Their attraction develops despite the disapproval of people who consider her background unacceptable. West's musical numbers and dressing room scenes provide the film's most provocative moments. Tira studies potential admirers, receives expensive gifts, and maintains records of the men who have disappointed her. She behaves less like someone seeking marriage than a business owner evaluating customers. The courtroom climax became particularly famous. After Jack ends their engagement because of false accusations, Tira sues him for breach of promise and acts as her own lawyer. She questions former lovers one by one, turning the trial into a public review of her romantic history. Instead of appearing embarrassed, she controls the testimony and exposes the men's vanity. Such confidence was threatening because pre-code heroines were usually permitted desire only when the story surrounded it with regret. Tira has difficult moments, but she does not regret being Tira. Even her work with lions reflects the central joke. Society considers her dangerous because of her relationships, yet she calmly places her head inside an animal's mouth every night. The men attempting to control her appear far less courageous. The film became a major commercial success, proving that moral controversy could attract enormous audiences. That success increased pressure on the industry. Campaigners could no longer dismiss suggestive films as marginal attractions, when one of Hollywood's biggest stars openly built her appeal around them. Number 13. Design for Living, 1933. Two men, one woman, and a private agreement to avoid romance created a comedy that treated conventional morality as a badly written rulebook. Commercial artist George Curtis and playwright Thomas Chambers meet advertising artist Gilda Farrell on a train in France. Both men fall in love with her, and Gilda is attracted to both. Rather than choose immediately, the three decide to live together under a gentleman's agreement, supposedly based on friendship and professional support. The arrangement quickly becomes complicated. When Tom travels to London for work, Gilda and George begin a relationship. Later, after George leaves, she becomes involved with Tom. The film never pretends these developments are accidental. Miriam Hopkins makes Gilda the active center of the triangle. She refuses the idea that she must permanently choose one man simply because society lacks language for her feelings. One famous scene places the three characters together as Gilda establishes the rules of their partnership. The conversation sounds civilized, but every pause reveals attraction. Director Ernst Lubitsch relies on doors, glances, and interrupted dialogue, allowing audiences to understand far more than characters openly state. Frustrated by the chaos, Gilda marries conventional advertising executive Max Plunkett. Respectability proves unbearable. His world is filled with commercial slogans, rigid expectations, and parties where every guest performs social success. George and Tom eventually invade Max's home, and the trio reunites in a car after abandoning the marriage. Their laughter makes clear that they have chosen uncertainty together, over respectable misery apart. The production code's principles insisted that marriage remain sacred, and that forbidden relationships never appear attractive. Design for Living challenges both rules with elegant humor. Max's legal marriage is emotionally empty, while the unofficial triangle contains affection, creativity, and genuine understanding. Number 12. Blood Money, 1933. A bail bondsman, a thief, and a thrill-seeking society woman form one of the strangest romantic triangles of the pre-code period. Bill Bailey operates a successful bail bond business and maintains relationships throughout the criminal world. He is involved with nightclub owner Ruby Darling, but their comfortable arrangement changes when wealthy young Elaine Talbart enters his office after being arrested for shoplifting. Elaine does not steal because she needs money. She steals because danger excites her. Her fascination with crime grows when she meets Ruby's brother Drury, a handsome thief whose recklessness matches her appetite for risk. Frances D's performance makes Elaine unusually unsettling. She appears elegant and soft-spoken, while describing criminal excitement with almost romantic pleasure. One scene strongly suggests attraction between Elaine and Ruby, an implication exceptionally rare in an American studio film of the time. Bill initially believes he controls every person around him. He uses political influence, police contacts, and underworld friendships to solve problems. Yet when Elaine encourages Drury toward greater danger, Bill's network begins collapsing. The film's world contains almost no traditional heroes. Police officers cooperate when convenient. Criminals observe personal codes. Wealth protects Elaine from consequences that would destroy poorer people. Bill's business exists precisely because justice can be converted into money. Censors disliked stories that explained crime too clearly or invited audiences to identify with lawbreakers. Blood money practically lives inside their offices, nightclubs, and private relationships. It presents the underworld not as a hidden nightmare, but as a parallel society connected to respectable institutions. Even more troubling was Elaine's refusal to behave like an innocent woman, seduced by criminals. She actively seeks danger and becomes disappointed when others are not extreme enough. Her wealth has protected her from ordinary consequences, so she treats crime as entertainment. The conclusion turns public anger against Bill, but moral order never feels fully restored. His downfall comes through betrayal and crowd violence rather than clean legal justice. Number 11. Gold Diggers of 1933. 1933. Bright songs and enormous sets allowed Warner Brothers to smuggle poverty, exploitation, and revealing costumes into one of the Depression's most entertaining musicals. The story follows performers Carol, Polly, Trixie, and Faye as they struggle to find work after creditors close their show. Producer Barney Hopkins develops a new production about the Depression, but needs financial backing. Polly's boyfriend, Brad Roberts, secretly provides the money, revealing that he belongs to a wealthy family. Brad's brother and family lawyer arrive to stop him from marrying a performer. Their assumption that showgirls are dishonest creates the film's romantic complications, but the women quickly prove far better at manipulation than the men judging them. Busby Berkeley's Pettin' in the Park number became one of the most controversial sequences. Performers dance through artificial rain while changing behind transparent screens. A mischievous child watches, curtains disappear, and metal costumes create a final comic barrier. The number transforms censorship itself into a joke. Remember My Forgotten Man produces a completely different mood. Joan Blondell introduces images of unemployed veterans, breadlines, marching soldiers, and exhausted families. Instead of ending with cheerful romance, the film closes by reminding audiences that the Depression has abandoned men once celebrated as heroes. That ending was politically sharp. Hollywood musicals were expected to provide escape, yet this one concluded with accusation. The showgirls also challenged respectable stereotypes. Trixie openly targets the wealthy lawyer, but proves emotionally smarter than he is. Carol deceives Brad's brother, then genuinely falls in love with him. Their schemes are defensive strategies in a world where powerful men have already judged them. Censors saw suggestive choreography, costumes, bedroom misunderstandings, and jokes about money and romance. Social critics could also see something more dangerous. The film connected personal morality to economic survival. People lied because rent was due. Women pursued wealthy men because legitimate work had disappeared. Veterans stood in breadlines because patriotic promises had expired. Number 10. Torch Singer, 1933. A woman loses her child, reinvents herself as a nightclub star, and then enters thousands of homes through a radio program built on moral advice. Sally Trent gives birth while unmarried and struggles to support the baby. Believing adoption will provide a safer future, she surrenders her daughter and immediately regrets the decision. Unable to find the child again, Sally abandons her earlier identity and becomes glamorous singer Mimi Benton. Claudette Colbert's transformation is striking. Sally begins frightened and financially powerless. Mimi appears in elegant gowns, drinks freely, and treats romance with deliberate carelessness. The new persona protects her from the shame attached to the old one. Her life changes when she is hired to host a children's radio show as Aunt Jenny. Sitting before a microphone, Mimi gives wholesome guidance to families who would condemn her private history. The contrast is pure pre-code irony. Society accepts morality more easily when it is delivered by a beautiful voice and sponsored by a commercial product. The film's emotional center arrives when Mimi uses the program to search for her missing daughter. She sings and speaks directly to children listening across the country, hoping one of them may be hers. Meanwhile, the child's father returns without knowing what happened. He belongs to a wealthy family that once considered Sally unsuitable. Their renewed relationship forces both characters to confront the cost of social judgment. Censors had multiple reasons for concern. The movie begins with unmarried motherhood, shows adoption as emotional trauma, follows its heroine into nightlife, and allows her to maintain public success without becoming conventionally respectable first. Even the radio plot attacks hypocrisy. Millions trust Aunt Jenny because they cannot see Mimi's nightclub costumes. Her advice does not become less compassionate because of her past. Society's judgment simply becomes more obviously superficial. The conclusion moves toward reunion and domestic stability, but Colbert's commanding performance ensures that Mimi never disappears completely. Sally may recover her family, yet she does so only after building an identity strong enough to survive without their approval. Number 9. Search for Beauty, 1934. A pair of Olympic athletes unknowingly become the respectable faces of a magazine that has very different plans for their bodies. Larry Williams and Barbara Hilton believe they have been hired to promote health and physical fitness. Behind the project stand con artists who intend to transform a failing publication into a sensational success. The athletes soon discover that their wholesome images are being used to sell suggestive material. Buster Crabbe and Ida Lupino lead a cast filled with swimmers, athletes, models, and performers, selected partly for their appearance. Group exercise scenes display bodies with a frankness that reformers considered inappropriate, even when the official subject was health. The film's comedy depends on the difference between respectable language and commercial intention. Publishers speak about culture, beauty, and physical improvement, while privately discussing circulation and public curiosity. They understand that scandal sells best when packaged as education. A major sequence brings contestants from several countries to a beauty competition. Costumes become increasingly revealing, cameras linger on athletic physiques, and the event resembles a carefully organized excuse for visual display. Larry and Barbara eventually attempt to reclaim the magazine and turn it toward genuine fitness. Their battle is not simply against criminals, but against an industry that knows readers may purchase moral outrage and temptation at the same time. The timing made the film especially vulnerable. Released in 1934, it arrived as pressure for strict enforcement was reaching its peak. Material tolerated only months earlier could now be cited as proof that Hollywood had ignored every warning. Search for Beauty also mocked the language of censorship. Its dishonest publishers would have happily called their magazine educational if that label protected sales. The movie therefore revealed how easily respectability could become marketing. For exhibitors, images of lightly dressed athletes were an obvious concern. Yet the more uncomfortable message involved the audience itself. The film suggests that publishers, censors, and customers all understand what is being sold, even while everyone pretends to be discussing health. Number 8. The Bitter Tea of General Yen, 1933. A missionary's certainty begins collapsing when she becomes emotionally connected to the Chinese warlord she has been taught to fear. Barbara Stanwyck plays Megan Davis, an American woman who travels to China, intending to marry missionary Dr. Robert Strike. During civil conflict, she becomes separated from him and is taken to the palace of General Yen, played by Swedish actor Nils Astor, in makeup reflecting Hollywood's discriminatory casting practices of the era. Yen is cultured, ruthless, amused by Western moral superiority, and fascinated by Megan. Their conversations develop into a struggle over power, belief, and attraction. Megan condemns his methods, while Yen repeatedly exposes the hypocrisy of foreigners who claim to save China without understanding it. The most controversial sequence is Megan's dream. In it, Yen approaches her as a threatening figure before transforming into a romantic rescuer. She embraces him, revealing desires her waking mind refuses to admit. For 1933 audiences, the suggestion of an interracial relationship crossed one of Hollywood's strongest taboos. The production code specifically opposed such relationships, and many regional boards were even stricter. The film never allows Megan and Yen a conventional romance, but emotional intimacy is enough to destabilize her identity. When she attempts to protect Yen's mistress, Ma Li, her trust leads to betrayal. Yen loses power and accepts his fate with ceremonial calm. Director Frank Capra presents the palace through shadows, curtains, and soft movement, creating an atmosphere unlike his later celebrations of small-town America. The visual beauty encourages viewers to experience Megan's fascination, rather than merely condemn it. That invitation made the film dangerous. Western missionaries do not automatically possess moral authority, and the Chinese general is not reduced to a simple villain. Although the representation remains shaped by stereotypes, Yen receives intelligence, dignity, and emotional complexity. The movie reportedly struggled commercially in some regions, with racial prejudice limiting audience acceptance. Exhibitors knew that even the implication of desire across the color line could inspire organized objections. Number 7. The Divorcee, 1930. Respectable society appears calm until Norma Shearer's Jerry discovers that her husband has been unfaithful. Instead of quietly forgiving him, she decides that the freedom enjoyed by men should also belong to women. That decision transforms a fashionable marriage drama into one of the earliest sound films to openly challenge Hollywood's double standard. The most famous sequence arrives when Jerry confronts her husband after spending a night with his best friend. She refuses to act ashamed and coldly explains that she has simply balanced their accounts. For audiences accustomed to women being punished immediately for such behavior, her confidence was startling. The story follows Jerry through separation, parties, new relationships, and an increasingly empty search for independence. Yet the film does not portray her as a simple villain. She is intelligent, hurt, and responding to rules that protect her husband while condemning her. Some conservative exhibitors and community groups objected to the film's treatment of marriage because it suggested that women possess the same desires and choices as men. Shearer's sophisticated performance made the argument impossible to dismiss as cheap sensationalism. She even won the Academy Award for Best Actress. The scandal was not merely that Jerry broke her vows. It was that the film allowed her to explain why, and made her explanations sound dangerously reasonable. Number 6. Scarface, 1932. Machine gun fire, political pressure, and a criminal who enjoyed his rise too much delayed this gangster landmark for months. Tony Camonte begins as an ambitious enforcer and eliminates anyone standing between him and control of Chicago's illegal alcohol business. Paul Muni plays Tony with restless excitement, turning every new weapon, car, and nightclub into proof that crime has improved his life. The film repeatedly places an X-shaped mark near approaching death. Shadows, architecture, scars, and objects create a visual countdown as Tony's victories accumulate. One famous sequence compresses a gang conflict into a rapid montage. Calendar pages fall while gunfire continues, suggesting that organized violence has become a regular business schedule. Another scene introduces Tony to a machine gun. His delighted reaction makes the weapon appear like a modern toy, exactly the kind of glamour censors feared. Authorities objected before the film could receive wide release. Gangster pictures faced proposed restrictions in several American cities, and Scarface became the center of arguments over whether such stories encouraged crime. Howard Hughes resisted demanded changes, while the title was expanded to Scarface, The Shame of a Nation, to emphasize condemnation. An alternate ending was prepared to ensure Tony faced legal judgment, and a moralizing opening attempted to place responsibility on government. Yet none of those additions could erase Muni's magnetic performance. Tony's relationship with his sister Seska created further controversy. His extreme jealousy carries implications beyond ordinary brotherly protection. When he discovers her with his closest friend, his reaction exposes possessiveness that the film never fully explains. The picture ultimately destroys Tony. Trapped inside his home, he initially believes he can fight everyone, then collapses into fear. Outside, an electric sign advertises the phrase, "The world is yours," turning his dream into a final joke. For censors, punishment arrived too late. Audiences had already watched Tony gain money, influence, fashionable clothes, and public fear. His fall occupies minutes. His rise occupies the movie. That imbalance explains why exhibitors hesitated. Scarface did not teach viewers to become gangsters, but it understood the appeal of becoming powerful in a society where legal institutions seemed ineffective. Number 5. The Life of Virgie Winters, 1934. A small-town dressmaker's long relationship with a married politician led to a Catholic boycott warning and a complete ban by Chicago's censorship board. Virgie Winters and John Shadwell fall in love when they are young, but family pressure separates them. John marries another woman and eventually becomes a successful political figure. Virgie remains emotionally connected to him, and their relationship continues across many years. The film's central problem was not a momentary affair treated as weakness. Virgie and John regard their bond as the true relationship, while his legal marriage appears empty and socially convenient. Their daughter is raised without public acknowledgement of her father. Anne Harding plays Virgie with quiet dignity. She does not behave like a destructive intruder attempting to steal another woman's husband. Instead, she builds a life around love that society refuses to recognize. One emotionally important scene shows Virgie watching John participate in public life while she remains outside the respectable image supporting his career. She carries the private cost of decisions that allow him to appear honorable. Before production, Joseph Breen warned that the story might be denied approval because it appeared to justify adultery. Revisions eventually secured industry acceptance, but opposition continued. The film appeared on a Catholic list of pictures recommended for boycott, and Chicago's board banned it. That reaction reveals why the picture was considered more dangerous than louder pre-code scandals. Virgie does not sing suggestive songs, control a criminal empire, or parade through nightclubs. She simply remains sympathetic. The film's treatment of her daughter added another sensitive issue. The child is not portrayed as evidence of moral corruption, but as an innocent person endangered by secrecy and social reputation. Political hypocrisy also enters the story. John's career depends upon presenting a respectable family image, while the woman he loves and the daughter he fathered remain hidden. Public morality becomes a campaign strategy rather than a private truth. Number 4. Freaks, 1932. The studio expected a horror attraction. Instead, audiences encountered a revenge story so upsetting that countries banned it for decades, and MGM cut nearly half an hour. A beautiful trapeze performer named Cleopatra learns that circus performer Hans has inherited a fortune. Although Hans is engaged to Frida, Cleopatra pretends to love him while secretly continuing her relationship with strongman Hercules. The circus community includes performers with real physical differences rather than actors created through makeup. Director Todd Browning presents their daily routines, friendships, arguments, and relationships with a directness almost unknown in major studio films of the period. During a wedding feast, the performers accept Cleopatra into their community. They pass a cup around the table and chant that she is now one of us. Disgusted and intoxicated, Cleopatra insults them and reveals that she has been mocking Hans. The celebration instantly becomes humiliation. After Hans becomes ill, Frida and the others discover that Cleopatra and Hercules are poisoning him. The final storm sequence follows circus wagons through darkness and mud as the performers crawl beneath them carrying knives and other objects. Lightning reveals faces approaching from every direction. The ending shows Cleopatra transformed into a sideshow attraction, sometimes called the Duck Woman. The surviving version never fully explains the procedure, which makes the image feel even more nightmarish. Britain banned Freaks until 1963, eventually releasing it with an adults-only certificate. Other countries also prohibited or restricted it. Yet the film's reputation as an indecent horror picture hides its most challenging idea. Cleopatra and Hercules possess conventionally attractive bodies, but they are the story's cruelest people. The performers marketed by the circus as abnormal demonstrate loyalty, love, humor, and collective protection. That reversal forced audiences to examine their own reactions. Browning sometimes films the performers with sensationalism, but he also grants them power. They are not helpless objects waiting for rescue from conventional heroes. Number 3. Tarzan and His Mate, 1934. An underwater swim became so controversial that industry officials ordered prints changed across multiple territories. Jane lives with Tarzan in the jungle when former acquaintances arrive searching for an elephant graveyard fortune. The expedition hopes Tarzan will reveal the location, but Jane understands that removing the ivory would bring destruction. Maureen O'Sullivan's costume was already more revealing than later versions permitted. Jane and Tarzan live together without any visible marriage ceremony, share physical affection, and appear completely comfortable outside civilization's rules. The film's legendary swimming sequence pushed matters further. Jane dives into the water and swims beside Tarzan in an extended, graceful passage. Olympic swimmer Josephine McKim reportedly doubled for O'Sullivan during shots in which Jane appears unclothed. The scene is not filmed like an accidental glimpse. The camera follows the swimmers underwater as their bodies move through light and shadow. Its beauty made the censorship battle more intense because MGM defended it as art rather than crude sensationalism. Joseph Breen reported that the film had been rejected because the woman appeared completely nude. An industry jury agreed, despite MGM executive Irving Thalberg's objections. By late April 1934, prints in all territories were ordered changed, though uncensored material apparently continued appearing in regions without censor boards. The villains bring modern weapons and commercial ambition into Tarzan's world. Tarzan, supposedly uncivilized, shows greater respect for life and loyalty than the educated visitors. Jane chooses his world knowingly. That choice challenged cultural assumptions. She is not a helpless woman waiting to return home. She rejects dresses, drawing rooms, and social status because she prefers the life she has created with Tarzan. Number 2. The Story of Temple Drake, 1933. Hollywood took a novel many considered impossible to film, removed its author's name from advertising, and still produced one of the most controversial dramas of the decade. Temple Drake is a wealthy judge's granddaughter whose reckless behavior hides fear and confusion. While traveling with an intoxicated companion, she becomes stranded near an isolated house occupied by criminals. Trigger, played by Jack LaRue, immediately focuses on Temple. The atmosphere grows increasingly threatening as she searches for protection among people either unwilling or unable to help her. The film handles the attack through shadows, reaction shots, and implication, but audiences understood what had occurred. Afterward, Trigger takes Temple to a house in the city and keeps control over her. When he later threatens her again, she shoots him. Yet rather than tell the truth, she allows another man to stand trial for a crime connected to the same night. The courtroom sequence gives Miriam Hopkins her strongest material. Temple sits before her grandfather and the community that has always protected her reputation. As questioning continues, she realizes that silence will condemn an innocent person. Before shooting, the Hayes office objected to any adaptation of William Faulkner's Sanctuary. Officials later prohibited Paramount from mentioning the novel in advertising, as though separating the film from its source could reduce the scandal. The picture still attracted condemnation and became frequently associated with the campaign for stronger censorship. Its subject involved sexual coercion, criminal control, social hypocrisy, and a heroine whose behavior could not be divided neatly into innocence and guilt. Temple is neither a perfect victim nor the immoral figure some characters imagine. She makes selfish choices, experiences terror, hides the truth, and eventually risks everything to correct part of the damage. That complexity made her unsuitable for the simple moral categories demanded by reformers. The film also exposes the weakness of elite protection. Temple's family name, education, and social standing cannot save her in the criminal house. Later, those same privileges nearly allow her silence to destroy someone with less power. Number 1. Babyface, 1933. No other film better explains why Hollywood's loose pre-code period was running out of time. Barbara Stanwyck plays Lily Powers, a young woman working in her father's illegal drinking establishment in an industrial Pennsylvania town. Her father allows customers to exploit her while profiting from the arrangement. When she resists, he treats her survival as part of the business. After his death, Lily receives advice from an older cobbler who tells her to use her power over men rather than continue being used by them. In the original version, his philosophy draws from Nietzsche and presents Lily's ambition almost as liberation. She travels to New York with her friend and companion Chico, played by Teresa Harris. Arriving at a bank without money or connections, Lily begins using relationships with male employees to move upward through the building. Lily remains emotionally detached from most of the men. She has learned that affection creates vulnerability, while desire can be converted into security. Her strategy is ruthless, but the opening scenes make clear where she learned ruthlessness. Eventually, Lily becomes involved with bank president Cortlandt Trenholm. When financial scandal threatens him, he asks her to return the fortune and jewelry she has accumulated. Her decision forces her to choose between the security she built and the first relationship that may contain genuine feeling. The original and revised versions reveal the struggle over Hollywood's future. In one, Lily's climb is connected to a philosophy of self-determination. In the approved version, the cobbler becomes a moral voice, warning that she has chosen wrongly. But even censorship could not erase Stanwyck's performance. Lily studies every room before speaking. She identifies power instantly. When men assume they are choosing her, her expression reveals that she selected them first. Babyface outraged reformers because its central method was too easy to understand. Lily did not need inherited wealth, education, or family approval. She recognized the hypocrisy of powerful men and turned it into a ladder. Her actions damage people, and the movie never requires audiences to call her heroic. Yet it also refuses to pretend the men are innocent victims. They control banks, employees, marriages, and money. Lily controls the one resource her society taught her could command their attention. That argument made the picture far more explosive than a simple story about seduction. It presented female ambition as a response to economic and personal exploitation. Lily becomes dangerous because being powerless was worse. The revised ending tries to restore moral balance. But viewers have already watched her travel from a filthy back room to the top floor of a financial empire. No final speech can make that transformation disappear. These films prove old Hollywood was never truly innocent. It was simply edited until later generations believed it was. Which forbidden pre-code movie deserves the #1 position on your list? Share your choice in the comments. and tell us which controversial era we should uncover next. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because Hollywood's cleanest legends often hide its dirtiest secrets.